Chapter 149. Little and parted his hands, and hundreds of white bones flew in front of him and gathered into a tight ball. Holy Church! The pale bone-smelting flames surged up and swallowed the white bone ball. The surface of the white bone ball gradually melted. Little and put his palms together and looked down. However, everything was empty. He had no eyes, no nose, and no heart. He chanted the Buddha's scriptures, but he could not make any sound. In this extremely strange and terrifying scene, he gave off a dignified and righteous aura. There was no evil or ghostly aura at all. The process of melting the bone ball was extremely slow, but under Little An's control, the pale bone-smelting flames grew stronger and stronger. Before he knew it, another half a month passed. Ever since he learned the art of alchemy that night, Qian Rongji came to visit him a few more times. However, in the end she could not get anything out of Li Qingshan, so she hurried back to Jiaping City. She only left behind a sentence, saying that she would wait for him in Jiaping City. As for Li Qingshan's peaceful life, it was finally disrupted slightly. Even after the Qian family's rule over ancient Wind City crumbled, it could not turn the city into a happy paradise. This world was not a fairy tale world where everyone lived together happily. When there was no tiger in the mountain, the monkey became king. The martial artists who had been suppressed by the Qi practitioners started to show themselves. They formed their own cliques and fought for territory. Every day, they had to fight on the streets for the ownership of every brothel. There were also countless martial arts competitions and assassinations in the dark. On this day, Li Qingshan went to a restaurant he frequented and ordered a table full of good food and wine. He had just started eating when a large group of people surged in and chased away all the customers. It seemed that the leaders of the two gangs in the western part of the city had chosen this place to negotiate. A man came to Li Qingshan's table and said impatiently, "Are you done eating? If you are, then scram." Li Qingshan looked at the man, then at the food on the table. He shook his head firmly. "I'm not done." The burly man said, "Brat, don't be tactful and pretend to be tough. These days I've crushed a lot of bones under my hands." In the face of such a meaningless and unthreatening threat, Li Qingshan couldn't even bring himself to feel angry. He sighed that he had been too lazy recently. The burly man was enraged and attacked without hesitation. He was as simple-minded as he looked. No, his limbs weren't developed either. The brawny man flew out of the shop and crashed into a mud wall. However, when one burly man fell, dozens of burly men stood up and glared at him like tigers watching their prey. They shouted a few equally meaningless words and swarmed over. Then all of them flew out. The remaining people seemed to have been enlightened. They stood there while trembling and watched as Li Qingshan finished his meal. He placed the money on the table and walked out of the shop while mumbling to himself, "What do you mean by a peaceful life? If I don't have power, I won't even be able to eat to my heart's content." At this moment, the leaders of the two gangs walked over from the two ends of the street under the escort of their respective people. In order to express their contempt for their opponent, they both chose to arrive late without prior consultation, but they just happened to block Li Qingshan at the entrance, or more accurately, they were blocked by Li Qingshan at the entrance. Li Qingshan had just walked down the stairs when he looked up and saw that the sky was hazy. Summer was almost over. "Who are you?" Li Qingshan thought he really is a boss after all. At the very least, he can ask about his opponent's origins and name. Of course, it's very likely that I've overestimated him. The several dozen men groaning on the ground should have played quite the role. "Li Qingshan of the Hawkwolf Guard, you're their boss. You've attacked a Hawkwolf Guard in public, so your crimes cannot be forgiven. Today, I'll execute you on the spot. Forget it, I haven't been very murderous lately. You're lucky." With Li Qingshan's words and his rising aura, the faces of the two bosses paled. Even if another decade passed, the people of ancient Wind City would never forget this name. Just why did they have to run into this person? When Li Qingshan said, "Execute you on the spot," his knees buckled, and he knelt on the ground. He could not even beg for mercy. He closed his eyes and awaited death. However, Li Qingshan's tone and aura suddenly plummeted. He was like a singer who could not reach the high notes and had chosen to give up helplessly. Only when the figure vanished did the two bosses rise to their feet with the support of their subordinates. They looked at one another, both feeling relieved that they had survived a disaster. In the end, the two of them let go of their past grievances because of this experience. They drank and chatted merrily, establishing a new gang together. It went without saying. Li Qingshan returned to his residence and patted his face in the mirror. "I need to buck up, Li Qingshan." Suddenly he felt like he understood the mentality of a master, like, someone like you isn't worth my time. However, he immediately made up his mind and tossed this mentality aside. You're just a low-level Qi practitioner. You're nowhere close to the level where you can say something like that. Yep, if anyone provokes me in the future, I'll step on their shit. Li Qingshan looked at the pit again. Little and, are you still not done? He had already begun to miss Jiaping City. He missed Zhuozhibua. Only when there was pressure would there be motivation. Compared to these dull days, he would rather be surrounded by powerful enemies and slaughter his way out with everything he had. However, when he returned this time, he should be able to give him a pleasant surprise. Although he was rather lazy, he did not stop cultivating over the past half a month. He swallowed close to 200 Qi gathering pills. Not only did his demon Qi skyrocket, his cultivation of the second layer of Qi practitioner also completely stabilized. Abundant and pure true Qi flowed endlessly in his Yang-Heal meridian. He had also touched the edge of the fifth layer of the innate method of practicing Qi. In the pit, the huge ball of white bone had already been completely melted, turning into a pure white crystalline ball. However, one could vaguely make out that it was an extremely vicious skull. Several hundred skeletons had only been refined into a tiny prayer bead. Xiaoan pinched the prayer bead between her fingers. She would need at least 14 skull prayer beads if she wanted to make one. White bone spiritual artifacts were actually so difficult to forge. This was also the reason why Little N had chosen the skull prayer beads as his first spiritual artifact. Every single item recorded in the path of white bone and great beauty possessed immense power. They were not items that he could forge at his current level. However, the skull prayer beads could be forged one by one. There was no need to forge them all at once. He could do it step by step. Little N held the prayer bead in his hand and felt that his mind was connected to it. It was as if this prayer bead was not a spiritual artifact, but a part of his body. The truth was more or less the same. The flames in the pit were extinguished, returning to his skull. Only 2 specks remained. He leapt through the soil, following Li Qingshan's aura and leaving the pit. Having lost the support of that invisible power, the soil above the pit immediately collapsed. The next day, someone discovered that the corpses of the Qian family members had disappeared, becoming a mystery. In the darkness, Li Qingshan smiled as he opened his eyes. Little N, are you done? A little skeleton that sparkled like jade stood in front of him. The flames in its eye sockets were a mix of red and white. Li Qingshan rubbed his head. You really are much prettier. From the perspective of a skeleton. From the perspective of a skeleton, Little N opened his palm and took out a skull prayer bead. Li Qingshan picked up the prayer bead. What is this? The prayer bead suddenly left his hand and flew around the room, drawing out a white blur. With a series of sonic booms, it was actually no slower than Zhou Wenbin's flying sword. Li Qingshan was stunned. This is a spiritual artifact? And it was at least a mid-grade spiritual artifact. Little N smiled. He clenched his bony fingers, and the prayer bead in the air suddenly swelled in the wind, turning into a skull that was as large as a bucket. Its teeth chattered as if it was laughing strangely. Its eye sockets shone with the same red and white flames as Little N. When a child obtained something good, he obviously had to show it off to the people closest to him. When Li Qingshan understood the cause and effect of Little N's artifact forging, he could not help but sigh. This path of white bone and great beauty sure was useful. That white bone bodhisattva sure was thoughtful. If he did not have a weapon, he would still be at a disadvantage against an enemy even if his abilities and techniques were powerful. As these white bone spiritual artifacts were closely connected to his body, he could control them as easily as he wished. Their power surpassed that of regular spiritual artifacts. Calling them white bone spiritual artifacts was actually not too accurate. Even a single prayer bead was not at the level of a spiritual artifact. However, as Little Ant's cultivation was still too low and he did not have enough materials, he could only forge them to this level for now. Although the skull prayer beads were the easiest to forge, they were not the weakest. A string of skull prayer beads had at least 14 beads, and there were still 18 beads, 21 beads, all the way up to 1,080 beads. There were 10 different levels, and they could bind immortals and immortals. They had endless uses. Li Qingshan expressed his admiration once again, before asking about the matter he was most concerned about. Do you have any idea how many more sacrifices are needed to restore your body? Little and lowered his head and calculated with his fingers. Afterwards, he raised his head and extended a finger. The flesh and blood of 1,000 more people were needed. Li Qingshan said, "The task is very difficult, but at least we have something to look forward to. Then let's go on a killing spree." When he extended a finger, it was destined that there would be 1,000 less evil people in the world. That night, Li Qingshan went to the county office and asked the county magistrate for the money he needed to sell his house and land. Although it was an emergency sale, it was still more than 1,000,000 taels of silver. It could be exchanged for 10 qi concentration pills from Zhou Wenbin. Before the next day, Li Qingshan took Little and left the city that night. He did not look back at ancient Wind City again, nor did he have any plans to return. Meanwhile, in the lotus pond halfway up the mountain, a red carp swam freely, shaking the green lotus flowers. Fate had formed today, and he did not know if they would meet again. Under the curtain of night, Li Qingshan strode through the air in a straight line. By daybreak, he had arrived at the ferry crossing of the Clear River. He boarded the boat and traveled down the river again, heading straight for Jiaping. In Jiaping City, Zhuozhibwa said, "So you're saying that he really defeated Xianxia?" Qian Rongji said, "Yes, I also find it inconceivable. Xianxia, that old thing, is old and frail. He's really too useless." He probably didn't expect that Li Qingshan was a body cultivator, so he was careless and fell for it. "It looks like you'll have to do it yourself." When Qian Rongji left ancient Wind City, in order to take the spirit artifact furnace with her, she had hired a large carriage to travel slowly. Now, she had just returned to Jiaping. Chapter 150. Not only did Qian Rongji not warn Zhuozhibwa that Li Qingshan might have been hiding his strength, but she even purposefully misled him, as if Li Qingshan's victory was extremely lucky. Even if the Holy Church had no interest in it, she still grew tired of this old bastard. She really hoped that he would die a violent death just like that old bastard Xianxia. This kind of silent method was often more terrifying than straightforward plots and schemes. Sure enough, Zhuozhibwa followed his usual train of thought and sneered. "It's good that he's alive. It saves me the trouble of making another trip. I can even personally kill him and vent my hatred." "Are you going to kill him once he returns?" Qian Rongji hid her smile in the depths of her pitch-black eyes. She was prepared to watch the show that was about to unfold. Zhuozhibwa instead said, "We'll have to think about this at length." Although he was a commander, he was not bold enough to kill a Hawkwolf guard so brazenly. Afterwards, he sneered. "Though, do you think he'll be able to do well under my command? I want to show him whether the headquarters of the Hawkwolf guard is surnamed Zhua or Li." Qian Rongji said, "On this mountain, in this Jiaping city, is there anything that doesn't belong to you? Even I'm the same." Zhuozhibwa laughed aloud. He would continue to watch over Jiaping City, watching over everything like a hawk forged from steel, until the day he died. When he saw the Clear River turn around the mountain again, Li Qingshan directly leapt off the boat. Under the cries of the passengers, he climbed up the cliff face. He returned to his residence first and settled Little and down before going to see Zhuozhibwa. He was very interested in seeing how this Commander Zhuo's attitude would change now. Li Qingshan clasped his hands. "Greetings from subordinate Li Qingshan, Commander Zhuo." That was what he said, but he stood with his head held high like a javelin. He showed no respect at all. Zhuozhibwa stopped pretending to be friendly. He asked coldly, "Why didn't you return immediately after completing the mission?" Li Qingshan said in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing, I obviously had matters to attend to. Zhuozhibua was even more displeased. A person who was about to die actually dared to be so arrogant. I'll deduct half of your merit points. You may leave. Half of their hard-earned merit points had been casually deducted. That was the equivalent of dozens of qi-gathering pills. Who wouldn't be angry? Li Qingshan suppressed his anger and didn't argue. He turned and left. He also couldn't kill a Black Eagle commander on this mountain. Right now, the tiger harms the man harms the tiger's heart, but because of the same reason, they could not easily make a move, but they were already sharpening their knives. As soon as Li Qingshan stepped out of the door, he bumped into Gu Jian. Gu Jian, on the other hand, had been waiting for a long time. With a face full of ridicule, he said, Li Qingshan, do you really think you're a big shot just because you killed an old man who's about to be buried? You actually dared to speak to the commander like that, now you're suffering. Li Qingshan said, it is indeed a good dog raised by Zhuozhibua. His words were full of energy. Of course, he was not afraid that Zhuozhibua, who was in the building, could not hear him. His expression became more and more gloomy. What did you say? Gu Jian, who had been scolded in front of his face, was even more furious. This was not the first time Li Qingshan had humiliated him like this. Back then, it was because he was worried that Li Qingshan had a powerful background that he had tolerated him. Li Qingshan sneered, you only dare to bark at me here. Gu Jian choked and couldn't speak. He had originally wanted to provoke Li Qingshan. As long as Li Qingshan made the first move, Zhuozhibua would have a reason to interfere. But it was true that without Zhuozhibua, how would he dare to provoke Li Qingshan? That was a monster who had killed a fifth-layer qi practitioner. Li Qingshan waved his hand, come with me to the front and explain things clearly. I'll let your plot succeed this time, and see if Zhuozhibua can save you. How would Gu Jian dare to follow? At that time, even if Zhuozhibua's plan succeeded, he would still be a dead man. He put on a brave front and said, don't be so arrogant. I'll see what happens to you. Li Qingshan did not look at him anymore. He turned around and was about to walk up when the old man guarding the treasure house stopped him. Who said you could go up there? Li Qingshan said, I have merit points, of course I can go up there. Go. The treasure house is under maintenance right now. Unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. Li Qingshan's pupils shrank and his brows furrowed. The old man felt an invisible force pressing down on his chest, making it hard for him to breathe. He forced himself to say, what, you still dare to barge in? Li Qingshan slowly raised his right hand, and the old man's throat skipped a beat. His muscles tensed up. His remaining true qi, which had been eroded by time, began to circulate wildly. He could sense that as long as Li Qingshan struck, it would be a terrifying attack that could collapse the mountains. Under the tremendous pressure, he did not even have the confidence to receive the next strike. However, Li Qingshan only patted the old man's shoulder. You're on your own. Afterwards, he turned around and left the treasure house. The old man immediately became covered in cold sweat. He clutched his knees and gasped for air. He was a veteran of the Jianghu for many years, yet he had actually been frightened by a half-grown junior. He felt utterly humiliated. He roared at Li Qingshan's back, you're the one who should be on your own. What happened afterwards was basically the same. There were no spiritual artifacts, no pills. The extremely rare merit points had been reduced to meaningless numbers. Li Qingshan wanted to exchange for a new wind-entwining blade, but he was turned down. Originally, the weapons damaged by the Hawkwolf Guard during missions could be exchanged for free. These people did not refuse to give it to him, only finding various reasons to turn it down. However, apart from beating them up, there was no other way to make them submit. These important places that were in charge of wealth were obviously all under the control of Zhuozhibua's trusted aides. As a matter of fact, he did not even need to say anything. All he needed was a single gesture, and Li Qingshan would be completely immobilized in the Hawkwolf Guard. In the end, Li Qingshan arrived before an extremely ancient building. The 3 words Eagle Hunting Building were written on it. This was where the Hawkwolf Guard handed out missions. This was probably the only place on the mountain that was not under Zhuozhibua's control. It was not that he could not control it, but because he could not obtain spiritual artifacts or pills from here. He could only obtain a pile of troublesome missions, and he needed Zhuojibua's permission to exchange the merit from completing the missions for actual items. Li Qingshan smiled. As long as this place was open to him, it was fine. To him right now, whether it be spiritual artifacts or pills, none of them were the items he needed the most. What he needed the most right now was in the eagle hunting building. A few Black Wolf guards were currently handing in missions in the main hall. As soon as they saw Li Qingshan enter, they immediately fell silent. Their mouths opened and closed silently as they communicated with true qi, discussing quietly. Li Qingshan walked up to the platform, and the attendant behind it stood up in a hurry. He said politely, "Sir, you've only just returned, yet you're already going out to hunt?" There were no secrets on a small mountain like this. However, although he had heard about the conflict between Li Qingshan and Zhuojibua, he dared not show any disrespect to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan said, "Let me see what missions there are." The attendant immediately took out a thick book nimbly. "Please have a look, sir." Book of Life and Death. The book was completely black, as if it had been soaked in countless layers of grease, yet it also seemed like the color of coagulated blood. It gave off an ominous feeling with a single glance, but it gave off a faint glow. Holding it in his hand, it just happened to give off a warm feeling. Li Qingshan said, "This book has probably been around for a long time." The attendant explained obediently, "It's been around since the establishment of the guards in Jiaping City. It's probably over 1,000 years old." Li Qingshan said, "Then it really is quite old. Does this book have a name?" The attendant said, "This is only a low-grade spiritual artifact used to record missions. It doesn't have an official name either. However, the people of the Jianghu call this book the Blacklist." Although he was only an attendant, as the guardian of the Blacklist, he obviously showed pride on his face. Li Qingshan said, "Blacklist? Why is it called that? Is there anything particular about it?" The attendant said, "That's because all names that make it onto the Blacklist are certain to die." Li Qingshan smiled. "Birth, old age, sickness, and death are unavoidable. If you don't make it onto this book, you'll definitely die." According to his understanding, the White Lotus Mother who had sacrificed 200,000 people should have made it onto the blacklist as well. She even required a mighty White Hawk commander, a golden core cultivator, to personally take action. However, she did not seem to have been apprehended by Gu Yenying. At the end of the day, strength still reigned supreme in this world. Nothing was inevitable. However, to a group of people of the Jianghu, the names written down by Qi practitioners could basically be regarded as a true death list. Afterwards, he thought about it. What he was about to do was rather similar to the White Lotus Mother, except he stood on the side of the law. He was an enforcer and he was licensed to kill. Although the attendant was displeased with Li Qingshan's joke about the blacklist, he did not dare to argue with him. He guided Li Qingshan on how to use it. Afterwards, Li Qingshan understood why it was called the blacklist. Flipping through the pages, he saw a string of names. There were normal names as well as strange Daoist or Dharma names. The way it was used was rather similar to a mental map. With a single thought, the list would be arranged according to different standards. These standards included the amount of contribution, the level of danger, the strength of the enemy, and even the estimated benefits and so on. By focusing his mind on a certain name, he would receive a complete set of extremely detailed information, including the cultivation method the enemy practiced, the spiritual artifact they used, the area they were active in. Li Qingshan's side inside. It really was a large organization that had existed for several millennia after all. It was well organized and well equipped. The information basically simplified the steps of investigation and interrogation, handing over all the work that regular people could do for them to ordinary people. Afterwards, they would confirm the crimes and compile a list. The Hawkwolf Guard would be responsible for killing them one by one. Every single Qi practitioner was an expert who stood above all. They viewed longevity as their greatest goal, and they treated cultivation and practicing Qi as their #1 priority. It was impossible for any Qi practitioner to spend too much time and effort on these miscellaneous tasks. They would be ordered around like miscellaneous soldiers. Otherwise, no matter how great the welfare of the Hawkwolf Guard was, it was impossible for it to be so attractive to Qi practitioners. Sir, once you've chosen your mission, there will be a document that you can refer to at any time. The information on there is already the most detailed information our informants can obtain, but it cannot guarantee that it's completely accurate. I hope you can adapt to the situation, sir, the attendant reminded him routinely. Of course, Li Qingshan answered. With a thought, the blacklist was arranged according to strength. He glanced at the name at the very top. Zombie Daoist, 6th layer Qi practitioner. He made it onto the list due to capturing living people on a large scale and refining them into zombies. He's assessed as extremely dangerous. The contribution from completing the mission was actually as great as 5,000. However, it was very clear that apart from Zhuozhibua and the Black Wolf commander who had never shown himself, no one else could complete this. Of course, Li Qingshan possessed the strength to do so as well. However, he only paused for a moment before directly flipping to the back, arriving at the last few pages. Most of the last few pages of the blacklist no longer recorded the names of people, but the names of gangs and sections. In places like the Black Wind Stronghold, a single name was no longer enough for the Hawkwolf Guard to target them. Afterwards, Li Qingshan chose his mission. The attendant said in surprise, "Sir, do you really want to accept these missions?" Li Qingshan nodded without any hesitation. "Go retrieve the documents. I'll set off right now." The attendant passed down the order in a hurry. Before long, other attendants returned with a pile of documents. Many of them seemed extremely old and gave off a dusty smell. Clearly, they had just been cleaned. Li Qingshan stowed all of the documents into his 100 treasures pouch before turning around and leaving. As soon as he made his way out, the Black Wolf Guards gathered over in a hurry. What mission did he accept? Afterwards, they looked at one another. They were dumbfounded. What does the kid want to do? Uphold justice? Stop joking. No matter how many missions he completes, he won't be able to get any benefits without Commander Zhuo's approval. In the main building, Zhuozhibua sipped his tea leisurely. How's the kid? Gu Jian smiled. The kid ran around aimlessly and was given the cold shoulder. It had finally alleviated his hatred slightly. Zhuozhibua placed down his teacup. Before I take his life, it's not bad to mess around like this. I'd like to see just how long he can endure it. Gu Jian said, I think he'll have to endure it no matter what. At this moment, a Black Wolf Guard rushed in. Commander, that kid Li Qingshan has accepted a mission and left the mountain. Zhuozhibua said, Oh, is he trying to avoid me? Which mission did he accept? The Black Wolf Guard said, More than one. How many? The Black Wolf Guard revealed a strange expression. He accepted 27 missions. What? Let me have a look. Zhuozhibua accepted the mission document. There was a dense list of the missions Li Qingshan had accepted, but the contents of the missions took him by surprise. It was not because they were too difficult, but because they were too simple. The pirates of the Water Snake Gang, the horse bandits of Giant Deer Valley, and so on were all missions that the Hawkwolf Guard had accumulated over the years. They did not even bother to complete them. That was because the targets of these missions were all regular people of the Jianghu. They would only be able to get some silver from them at most. Pills and spiritual artifacts were out of the question, and because they were too simple, the contribution they gave was extremely low. Only Black Wolf Guards who had just joined the Hawkwolf Guard would use them for practice before refusing to waste any more time. They would rather practice Qi and cultivate on the mountain. As the lowest level of organization in the Hawkwolf Guard, the first grade of Black Iron, they were all composed of Qi practitioners. Their primary targets were Qi practitioners like themselves. As for the people of the Jianghu who practiced internal and external martial arts, they mainly served as a deterrent. As a result, a small vacuum was created. This vacuum was known as the Jianghu. Gu Jian said, with that he'll have another excuse to leave Jiaping City. Zhuozhibua snorted. If he's willing to do the hard work, then let him. By now, Li Qingshan had already left the mountain. He silently estimated that there would be around 1,000 people after completing these missions. This was his greatest objective, to help Little and recover his body. For the sake of this objective, he could temporarily postpone everything else. Now, he felt more and more like joining the Hawkwolf Guard was an extremely correct choice. Otherwise, would he still be able to go around asking around for bad people? And, if a Qi practitioner massacred regular people on a large scale, even if they were all bad people, it would still raise a great deal of attention. They might even end up on the blacklist, standing against the state. It was much simpler now. The information provided by the Hawkwolf Guard was extremely detailed. Every single person who could make it onto the blacklist of the Hawkwolf Guard through their martial arts was a criminal who had committed countless crimes. And they had all settled down in a certain place for many years, so it was very easy to find them. What he needed to do right now was find them one by one with a license to kill. Then he would kill his way through until dawn arrived. Li Qingshan placed his hand on the jar on his waist and thought to himself, "Don't worry, little one. Very, very soon, you'll be able to breathe fresh air, taste delicious food, and feel warmth. You'll be able to smile like other children." Li Qingshan did not leave the city directly. Instead, he paid a visit to the government office first. He wanted to exchange the several million taels of silver on him for some qi-gathering pills. He had a feeling that this journey would take quite some time. His opponents would not carry 100 treasures pouches on them to provide him with pills for cultivation. He also came to a better understanding of why no Hawkwolf Guard was willing to squash these bugs. Zhou Wenbin's eyes lit up when he saw Li Qingshan. "You've already reached the second layer. You've progressed much faster than I imagined." Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your concern, sir. With a powerful enemy right beside me, I obviously can't afford to be careless." Zhou Wenbin said, "As long as you know. I heard you killed Qian Yanian in a one-on-one duel?" Li Qingshan said, "It was just luck." Zhou Wenbin said, "Even if it was luck, defeating a 5th-layer Qi practitioner as a 2nd-layer Qi practitioner is still an unbelievable accomplishment. I need to remind you again that the 6th layer is completely different from the 5th layer." Li Qingshan nodded. Afterwards, he thought about Xiao En's various abilities. According to the standards of Qi practitioners, he was at least at the 6th layer or above. Moreover, he was as fast as lightning and possessed tremendous strength. Even when low-grade spiritual artifacts landed on him, they would not be able to leave a scratch on him. He was much more powerful than regular 6th-layer Qi practitioners. If he actually faced an opponent, there was no need for him to use the skull prayer beads at all. It was a battle between Qi practitioners or whatever. All he needed to do was charge up and forcefully tear through their protective true Qi, gouge out their hearts, and he would be victorious. The path of white bone and great beauty was a powerful ability that completely surpassed this world. The higher one cultivated it, the more terrifying its power would be. Zhou Wenbin said, "Although the sect has expelled Zhao Liangqing, they've sent people to investigate. They've probably already targeted you. The people of sects probably have no qualms about what they do, so you need to be careful." Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your warning, sir. I will be careful." The sect had lost their property in Jiaping City, and they had also lost an expert who was about to break through to the 6th layer of Qi practitioner, so this kind of reaction was expected. Zhou Wenbin said, "Fighting for a moment of loyalty is useless. Why don't you listen to me and go to the 100 schools of thought to cultivate for a while and avoid him for a while? When you're fully fledged, why would you need to fear a mere Zhuozhibua?" Chapter 151. Li Qingshan said, "Are the 100 schools of thought really that great? For you to constantly think about it, sir?" Zhou Wenbin said, "That's where the foundation of Great Xia lies. It gathers all the young geniuses in the 1,500 kilometers of the Clear River Prefecture, so it's obviously a great place. What do you think about my talent and cultivation?" Li Qingshan praised, "Sir, you've reached the 6th layer at such a young age and you're the ruler of a district, standing above millions. You're obviously a dragon among men." The Sacred Hall could not help but sigh inside. The 1,500 kilometers of land was the size of all the countries in Western Europe. Just how imposing would it be to gather all the geniuses in this vast land and cultivate together? Zhou Wenbin shook his head with a bitter smile. I'm not a dragon among men. I'm just barely average. As for the ruler of a district, why would the truly talented geniuses need to rely on external resources and waste their time on governing a district? As long as they cultivate quietly, their cultivation will far surpass mine. A sixth-layer qi practitioner who was average? Li Qingshan was slightly surprised inside. There are many geniuses in the world. There's no need to belittle yourself, sir. He was not surprised that there were people who surpassed him in terms of practicing qi, as he knew very well that his talent for practicing qi was nothing special, and he had only started practicing qi recently. He did not have anyone to guide him, and the pills he had always used were common ones like qi-gathering pills. Those who truly came from large clans of qi practitioners might have started cultivating at a very young age. They would have powerful seniors to answer their questions at all times, and they would eat rare pills that he had never even heard of. If their talent for cultivation was just slightly better, they would be geniuses. Whether it be time, resources, or talent, there were plenty of people who surpassed him. There was nothing unfair about those who were stronger than him. This was what it meant to win at the starting line. No matter what world, no matter what era, this would not change. Rather than complaining, it was better to work hard. Kings, nobles, generals, and ministers would rather have the guts. Zhou Wenbin said, "Your Sangzan Hua might come from a renowned clan, but he's always been studying in the 100 schools of thought. Even now, he still hasn't completely left. Even I have to call him senior brother when I see him. There's a saying that the geniuses of the world all come from the 100 schools. You better think about it. Then I'll definitely go and take a look in the future. When the time comes, I hope you can lend me a hand, sir." Sanctuary. Li Qingshan once heard from Gu Yenying that Sangzan's cultivation level was at the 10th layer of the aura training stage. Because of this, Gu Yenying even lectured him a little, telling him to drink less wine with women. At that time, he didn't have much of an idea of the 10th layer of the qi refining realm. Only now did he understand what kind of realm it was. He had opened all the meridians and acupoints in his body and was only one step away from the heavenly tribulation. Even if he transformed into a demon, he might not have the confidence to win. Zhou Wenbin said, "This is also my duty, it can't be considered helping. While I'm in Jiaping City, I'm not bound by any restrictions, and I don't have to do any work either. However, there is only one thing that must be done. Every year, 100 men and women with the aptitude for cultivation must be selected to study in the 100 schools of thought." The conditions were unexpectedly lax. Li Qingshan said, "It's that simple? As long as I have the aptitude for cultivation?" Zhou Wenbin said, "It's easy to get in, but it's not easy to stay there. How long you can stay will depend on your ability." Li Qingshan pondered for a moment. "That's right, does Milord still need money?" Zhou Wenbin said, "Ever since I became the county magistrate, there has never been a time when I didn't need money. Looks like you've gained quite a lot from this trip." Li Qingshan took out the several million taels of banknotes he had on him, saying that he got them from the Qian clan, and exchanged them with Zhou Wenbin for more than 50 qi-gathering pills. The number of qi-gathering pills he had on him once again exceeded 300, just enough for him to use for a while. Ordinary qi practitioners had a limit on how many external pills they could take, but for a demon like him, there was no such thing as too many pills. He could only plan carefully. If one day he could eat as many pills as he wanted, that would be great. Moreover, the qi-gathering pills he got from Zhou Wenbin were of good quality. Each pill was small, and although their medicinal properties were equal, they had much fewer impurities than Qian Yinyan's qi-gathering pills. "Did you refine these qi-gathering pills, sir?" Zhou Wenbin said, "I once studied under a renowned doctor in the School of Medicine in the 100 schools of thought. I specialized in the art of alchemy, so mere qi-gathering pills were obviously nothing to me." The ingredients for qi-gathering pills were relatively easy to obtain too. As the district magistrate, he only needed to give an order, and countless people would gather the medicinal herbs for him. Li Qingshan thought that if he had the opportunity, it would be nice to broaden his horizons in the 100 schools of thought. It was impossible for him to ask for guidance from anyone he saw about alchemy, talisman crafting, and formations. It would be best if he studied them systematically. wealth, companionship, law, and land. Companionship was something he could not go without. However, now was not the time. There were plenty of powerful foundation establishment cultivators in Clear River City. If Little and continued to hide in the jar, it would be very easy for him to be discovered. He needed to help him recover his body first. Li Qingshan stood up and bid farewell. He left the government office, but he did not make his way in the direction of Clear River. Instead, he made his way to the west of the city, taking the overland route out of the city. 75 kilometers away from Jiaping City, in the auspicious casino of Silver Mountain Town. Silver Mountain Town was only a town, but it was more prosperous than many cities, as it truly was right next to a mountain of silver. Who knew how many silver mines were buried beneath the mountain, allowing countless people to strike it rich overnight and then die overnight? Although the auspicious casino was a casino in the town, it was no worse than any first-rate casino. Moreover, it was open to all, regardless of wealth. It treated everyone equally. As long as you had silver on hand, you could gamble here and try your luck. Whether it was the mine owners who had struck it rich overnight or the miners who were in a precarious situation, they would all come here to try their luck. Under the resplendent lantern light, curses, laughter, and furious roars rang out. The smell of sweat, smoke, cosmetics, and many other smells were mixed together. Everyone's gazes were fixed on the gambling table. They clenched their fists and widened their eyes. Their expressions changed and twisted with the number on the sieve, showing joy, anger, sorrow, or joy. However, the expressions of the gamblers would inevitably end with sorrow and anger. Only Shi Jixiang could remain happy. He was the boss of the auspicious casino. He held 2 large golden balls in his hands, spinning them endlessly. His chubby face was like the Maitreya Buddha, always full of smiles. Looking down from the second floor of the casino, his eyes were filled with compassion. What a bunch of idiots! 2 burly men dragged a man up like they were grabbing a chicken. "Boss, we've caught him." The man knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his face. "Boss Shi, Hero Shi, Grandpa Shi, I beg you, I'll give you my mine, my family business, all of it. I beg you to be merciful and let my family go. If I let you go, who will let me go? Then, please give me a few more days. I'll definitely raise the money." Shi Jixiang said, "It's only right that you pay your debts. Even your wife and daughter are working hard in the brothel. You're a man, how can you be idling around? Go to the mines and work hard." "You actually," Shi Jixiang sighed helplessly. "You're dead, but the debt doesn't. You ran away without a trace. What can I do?" "Shi Jixiang, you bastard, you cheated, you lied to me. I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." The man suddenly lost control of his emotions. He owed a high-interest loan that he would never be able to turn over in this life. He could only die in the pitch-black mines. But before he could finish, he was knocked out by the burly man beside him. Shi Jixiang was furious at the burly man. "Who told you to hit him so hard? What if you kill him? Are you going to work for me? Tsk, look, what a pitiful person. I can't sleep when I see such a pitiful person. Don't let me see him again." The burly man nodded and carried the man out. Only then did a smile return to Shi Jixiang's face. He loved to gamble and was good at it. With his gambling skills, he had ruined the families of several mine owners. Now, he was the biggest mine owner in Silver Mountain Town. He also had a way to deal with those mine owners who didn't like to gamble. Not only was he good at gambling, but he also had first-rate martial arts. He spent money like dirt and gathered a group of good men who could fight and resist. With these 2 things, he would become the only mine owner in Silver Mountain Town and continue to laugh. This should be the place. At the entrance of the auspicious casino, a youth held a piece of paper and looked at the board above seriously. After confirming the words, "Auspicious Casino," he walked in with large strides. The 2 guards sized him up and welcomed him with smiles. They didn't stop him at all. After the youth walked in, they smiled and conversed with each other. "His physique isn't bad. He can dig down there for 2 more years." Li Qingshan liked to eat and drink to his heart's content. He had also had 1 or 2 unsuccessful experiences of drinking with prostitutes, so he could barely be considered as a prostitute. However, this was his first time gambling. Everything was novel to him. He looked around and arrived before a gambling table. It was an extremely simple game of buying big or small. He casually threw down a banknote worth 1,000 taels of silver and bet on big. This shocked the gamblers. However, they had seen bigger bets before. They just thought that he was an arrogant young master from a wealthy family. Once you've made your bet, open. As expected, he opened big. Li Qingshan accepted the banknote with a smile and bet it all on big. After a while, the clamor gradually died down. The gamblers' mouths were wide open. They looked at the small mountain of banknotes and silver ingots in front of Li Qingshan with complicated expressions. He had won 16 rounds in a row. The dealer had changed twice, but it didn't stop his winning momentum at all. He bet everything on every round. In the beginning, there were gamblers who followed him and made some money. But now, no one had the guts to follow him. A manservant came to Li Qingshan's side. "Brother, our boss invites you upstairs for a chat." Li Qingshan glanced upstairs and said loudly, "If you want to talk, then come down and talk." "What, are you afraid of people winning when you run a casino?" He slammed the table and left behind a faint handprint on the heavy, marble gambling table. Shi Jixiang finally couldn't laugh anymore. He gave the order in a low voice to clear the place and gather people. This time, a tough guy came. He was at least a second-rate expert. Looking at his posture, he was here to cause trouble. He couldn't be dismissed with money. Li Qingshan lowered his head. The corner of his mouth slightly curled. It was best to clear the place. And of course, the more people, the better. If you can gather 1,000 people, I will burn incense on your grave. If you have a grave. Chapter 152. A moment later, there were no longer any gamblers around Li Qingshan. Instead, there were dozens of menacing men with swords and sabers, either sneering or staring at Li Qingshan viciously. Holy Hall, all the doors and windows were tightly shut, ensuring that not even a fly could escape. Shi Jixiang then slowly walked down the stairs with a calm demeanor, as if everything was under his control. "Brother, who are you? Why don't you reveal your identity? Who knows, we might be friends. If you're short on travel expenses, feel free to ask. I, Shi Jixiang, am not a stingy person." Li Qingshan looked around and said regretfully, "Is that all?" Although he had the intention to eliminate evil, he obviously couldn't carry out another raid in Silver Mountain Town after killing Shi Jixiang. He didn't have the time or energy to do so. There were still 26 missions and more than 900 people. But when it came to something as big as challenging the arena, those who should come should come. Although Shi Jixiang didn't understand Li Qingshan's intentions, he could feel that Li Qingshan had no intention of paying attention to him. With an angry expression, he took off his thin shirt, revealing a muscular upper body with a Buddha tattoo. He sat in front of Li Qingshan. "I'll bet with you this round." Li Qingshan saw him take off his clothes and was about to make a move. Hearing him say this, he was slightly startled, then said, "All right." Whoosh. Shi Jixiang shook the sieve fiercely, his beady eyes staring at Li Qingshan. Meeting those clear black and white, calm eyes, he felt inexplicably uneasy. But he had fought and killed for many years, so his mental fortitude wasn't bad. He forcefully suppressed this uneasiness and slammed the color cup on the table, suddenly shouting, "Is it big or small?" Li Qingshan casually pushed, still betting all the silver on the table and still betting big. Holy Hall. Shi Jixiang raised his eyebrows and injected a wave of inner force into it. Then he immediately opened the color cup and laughed maniacally, 1-2 for points small. "You lost?" At the same time, he circulated all the energy in his body. The surrounding men all stared at him fiercely, ready to attack at any moment. They were all wary of Li Qingshan getting angry out of humiliation and attacking them. Li Qingshan shrugged. And then, Shi Jixiang was stunned. He had thought that Li Qingshan would angrily accuse him of cheating. "What do you mean?" "I'm willing to admit defeat." "Why lost?" "These silvers are all yours." After Li Qingshan finished speaking, he kicked the marble gambling table. None of the people present had expected that the heavy and sturdy marble table would actually instantly possess such a terrifying speed and momentum as it whizzed through the air. Shi Jixiang's pupils shrank. He was shocked. Even an external martial arts master could not possibly have such strength. At the same time, he reacted and leaped upwards with all his might. His lightness skill that he was proud of, the 8 steps chasing cicada, seemed so slow at this moment. He could only watch as the dice and the color cup spun and flew into the air. The marble table crashed into him. Boom! Smoke and dust flew everywhere. The marble gambling table crashed Shi Jixiang into the wall, embedding the lower half of Shi Jixiang's body into the wall. The bones in the lower half of his body were instantly crushed. The surrounding men who were watching from the side did not seem to be able to react to what had happened. Didn't they win? How was it that in the blink of an eye, their high and mighty boss Shi had turned into such a miserable state? Li Qingshan ignored them and made his way over to the marble table. Shi Jixiang really was a first-rate master after all. His life force was tough. Even though his lower half had been crushed, he still retained a clear mind. Who are you? Li Qingshan said, I work for the Hawkwolf Guard. I find it annoying when people like you smile. Only an expression like this suits you. He casually caught the falling dice beside him. Also, size doesn't depend on this. He tossed it backwards without even looking at it. The dice pierced a man who was about to launch a sneak attack from behind. Why are you betting against me? Everyone immediately understood the difference in strength, as well as the arrival of death. They charged towards the entrance without any regard, wanting to open the entrance that they had just sealed up tightly. A man looked back in fright. From Li Qingshan's waist, flames swept over like a dragon. Wherever it passed by, everyone was reduced to nothingness. Only a set of clothes remained, drifting gently to the ground. This was basically even more terrifying than any bloody scene. He leaned against the entrance firmly before losing all consciousness. The fire snake opened its mouth, about to swallow Shi Jixiang, but then it stopped and looked at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan waved his hand, expressing that there was nothing else he wanted to say. Shi Jixiang opened his mouth. He did have something else he wanted to say, but his face was illuminated by the flames. The fire snake immediately swallowed Shi Jixiang. The gamblers did not disperse. Instead, they lingered outside. The night had only just begun. They had yet to enjoy themselves to their heart's content. They believed that the foreign kid who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would soon suffer, and then the casino would reopen. However, there were also people who believed that the kid would not be that easy to deal with. Afterwards, they split into 2 groups and gambled. However, they waited for a very long time, but the entrance did not open. However, no one was bold enough to barge in. Only when the next morning did people from the government open the entrance. The large casino was empty. In a small inn in the middle of nowhere, there was only a single lantern. Li Qingshan unfolded the mental map of Qingzhou and planned his destination for the next day. He used an invisible line to connect the 27 points. 27 points, 1,000 people. Little and sat at the side. He looked at Li Qingshan thoughtfully. Li Qingshan asked, Do you remember the number? How much? Little and dipped his finger in tea and wrote on the table, 57. 26 points, 953 people. Li Qingshan revised the numbers in his mind. He did not deal with the assets left behind by Shi Jixiang. Ever since Little and gave him this clear goal, it had become his #1 goal that he could not wait to complete. The faster he was, the sooner Little and could recover his physical body. However, it was not completely without gains. Shi Jixiang had been engulfed by the flames, but he had left behind a few talismans. They were supposed to be his trump cards, but faced with the absolute difference in strength, they were not used at all. Li Qingshan raised his head and smiled. It will be done soon. Tomorrow we will go to Julu Valley and look for those bandits. What do you think? The route I planned is not bad, right? Little and wrote on the table again, but if we continue like this, we will soon alarm these people and they will hide. That's true. Then we can only move faster and travel day and night. If they all hide, it will be troublesome. Li Qingshan was slightly stunned. He rubbed his chin in thought and found that little Anne's words made sense. These people were not monsters in games, waiting to be cut down. After being cut down, they would respawn again. This was because these people could never be killed. Chapter 153. Little Anne was more than willing to search slowly with him. If they found one, they would kill it. If they could not, there was no need to panic. However, seeing how impatient he was, he did not want him to worry about his matters, so he came up with an idea. Why don't we find a way to gather them together? Li Qingshan sighed in admiration. Compared to finding them one by one and seeing if he could invite them to a certain place and then kill them all in one fell swoop, if he wanted to farm monsters, he obviously had to lure them over. Why hadn't he thought of such a simple principle? Momo Little Anne's head. I couldn't tell, but your little head is so full of schemes. Little Anne could not take the compliment and lowered her head in embarrassment. With that, Li Qingshan's thoughts immediately sprang to life. Afterwards, he flipped through the mission information and finally found a name. Xin Shihua lived on an island in a large lake in the south. He called himself the Island Master of Shihua. He was a romantic and had a penchant for sex. According to investigations, he was a pervert who had committed over a dozen crimes in the past. His cultivation was also the highest out of the 27 missions that Li Qingshan had completed. He was a first-layer Qi practitioner and was extremely reputable in the underworld. He was rated as someone with a wide network of friends. To the Hawkwolf Guard, he was perfectly stuck in a situation where he could defeat all martial arts practitioners. He could be described as a master of survival. Li Qingshan muttered to himself, Qian Yannian only had a birthday and he managed to invite so many people to celebrate. You might be a little weak, but you can't be too bad. Right now, all I care about is quantity, not quality. Of course, he probably would not be able to celebrate his birthday so coincidentally, but there had to be a reason for him to marry and have children. If he did not have a reason, then he would create one for him. Afterwards, he would invite many masters of the blacklist to attend the gathering. The corner of Li Qingshan's lips gradually curled up into a smile. Perhaps there would be even more unexpected benefits. Silver Mountain Town, the third day after Li Qingshan had left. Night One Watch. Within the thick mist, a luxurious carriage drove over slowly. The wheels rolled over the stone path, but it made no sound at all, as if it was separated by a layer of sponge. It stopped in front of the auspicious casino silently. A handsome young man dressed in red came down from the carriage and walked into the casino with his head held high. Although Shi Jixiang was gone, only 2 of the 5 leaders under him died that night. The remaining 3 were helping him take care of the mines and other properties, so they managed to escape the disaster. At this time, they were discussing with their subordinates how to distribute the remaining fat of Shi Jixiang to Shi Jixiang's concubines. The 3 of them laughed together, and the atmosphere was quite harmonious. But when it came to the ownership of the gambling house, which was making huge profits every day, they immediately changed their attitude. The dispute was so intense that they almost took out their blades to fight each other. At this time, the red-clothed youth walked into the gambling house. His body seemed very thin, and there were no signs of him practicing martial arts or qi. However, he was very arrogant, so he naturally did not receive any kind treatment. Where did you come from, Uncle Rabbit? This is not a place you should be at. Hurry up and get out. Before the person finished speaking, his shoulder fell off his head. His face was still filled with shock. He did not know how this world had suddenly turned upside down. At this time, a cold snort came from the carriage outside the gambling house, and a skinny finger stretched out of the curtain. The red-clothed youth turned back and smiled. Thank you, lady. A Xianxia expert. The 3 leaders were shocked at the same time. Moreover, it was a Xianxia expert who was unimaginably powerful. And the real trick was probably only Qi practitioners like Shuazhibua, who had opened up their Qi could see. To be able to directly release Qi over 30 meters away to kill someone, even a 6th-layer Qi practitioner would need the help of a spirit tool to do so. This was a different concept from using spells. Li Qingshan could also use a suitable spell to attack from this far away, but using qi, 3 meters was the limit. Moreover, it could only be used to slap people, not behead them. And for ordinary second-layer qi practitioners, 1 meter was already considered not bad. After all, if the power was similar to using qi directly, then why would qi practitioners spend so much effort to create spells, and then painstakingly condense their qi into spells? An old, shrill voice came from inside the carriage. You'll answer whatever he asks? If you don't know, then go investigate. If you don't get an answer, you'll all die. Everyone in the gambling house trembled. The red-clothed youth took out a portrait. That night, the person who came to the gambling house, was it him? The face on the portrait was extremely lifelike. It was Li Qingshan. After a while, the red-clothed youth came back to report. Lady, it's confirmed that the person was Li Qingshan. He left Silver Mountain Town. Where did he go? He probably went to Julu Valley. It seemed like he had completely grasped Li Qingshan's whereabouts. Then let's hurry. How impatient. This time, it was an old hand that stretched out of the curtain. Its long nails were painted bright red, making it look a little strange. A series of screams rang out in the gambling house. An ordinary long blade suddenly danced in the air, crisscrossing and drawing streaks of white light, killing everyone in the gambling house one by one. Compared to using qi to kill people directly, it was easier to use a tool. Of course, it would be even easier if the tool was a spirit tool. Everyone in the gambling house knew martial arts, and the 3 leaders were second-rate experts. But in the face of the all-pervasive long blade, there was no way they could resist. In a few breaths, the gambling house was littered with corpses, and the long blade finally fell to the ground with a clang. The red-clothed youth was slightly taken aback. He heard the old voice in the carriage say, "You humiliated my and you still want to live?" The red-clothed youth immediately revealed a look of incomparable happiness. He entered the carriage and threw himself into the arms of an old woman. The old woman was dressed in red, and her hair was white. Her face was haggard, and she hugged the handsome youth like a lover. They weren't just the 2 of them in the carriage. There were 3 other youths in the carriage, and they were just as young and handsome as the red-clothed youth. One of them complained, "Granny is biased. She only loves Jie." Said, "We agreed to serve Granny for the rest of our lives. You're not allowed to be jealous. Lady, there's no need for you to personally investigate something like this. You can just send any disciple from the torture chamber." The incident at the Jiaping Gate Tower is likely related to this person. To be able to kill Zhao Liangqing without anyone noticing, he must be at least in the 6th layer of qi refining. If we send a normal disciple, he'll just be sending himself to his death. There's no point in staying in Clear River City all the time. Granny's title was Grandma Shimin, but her surname wasn't Shimin, but Gate. There were 4 grannies in the east, west, and west. Each one of them had opened all 8 extraordinary meridians and was a powerful cultivator in the 9th layer of qi refining. No one dared to call her by her real name, and the people outside had gradually forgotten her real name. All that remained was a title of respect, and that was Grandma Shimin. Chapter 154. Fang Ben grumbled to the young man. Could it be that Granny has fallen for Li Qingshan because he's so strong? Granny already has us, so she can't be too unfaithful. It was completely the adoration of a lover, without the slightest hint of reluctance. It was just like the men of ancient Wind City looking at Hibiscus. Hibiscus was only at the 2nd layer, but her arts of charm were already enough to drive ordinary people crazy and strike fear into qi practitioners. Just how powerful would the arts of charm of this 9th layer qi practitioner Grandma Shimin be? How could these mortal youths resist her? All of the qi warriors were doing their best to satisfy their needs. Grandma Shimin said in a doting manner, all right. I'll kill him as soon as I see him. As long as Granny loves us, what does it matter if there are other men? We're all good brothers." With the passionate voices, the carriage moved slowly and silently, rolling over the wet, stone road. Only at a closer glance would one discover that there was an inch of space between the carriage and the stone road the entire time, as if there was an air cushion. It was the same when the horse's hooves landed on the ground. Some runes silently flickered. The horse that was driving the carriage was originally a fine horse that was used to drive the carriage during the day. However, when it pulled the magnificent carriage, it seemed as if it wasn't affected at all. It galloped forward at an inconceivable speed. The auspicious casino was littered with corpses. Afterwards, the minor caretakers of the minor leaders would gather over and engage in a new round of debate. They would grow endlessly like weeds. Perhaps outsiders would join in, and then there would be killing and conflict. This was the so-called Jianghu. In the end, Li Qingshan still went to Giant Deer Valley, as it was unlikely for the horse bandits to receive the island lord of Cherishing Flowers' invitation. According to the information, the horse bandits were composed of people with the bloodline of barbarians. Every single one of them had a purple beard. And even if the island lord of Cherishing Flowers invited them, it was unlikely for these barbarian horse bandits to ride to the island. As a result, he wanted to deal with them along the way. The horse bandits galloped through the vast wastelands. Giant Deer Valley was only one of their habitats. When Li Qingshan arrived, missed. He did not give up. Instead, he lay on the ground and twitched his nose to carefully identify the traces on the ground, like a sharp and vigilant beast. As his demon body gradually grew stronger, the world in his eyes also became more and more colorful, full of three-dimensional and layered feeling. This kind of tracking ability was almost instinctive. The smell and marks on the ground were still fresh. They hadn't gone far, and the marks on the ground showed that there were at least 200 horse bandits, which made Li Qingshan's eyes brighten. Then he immediately went on his way. True Qi gathered under his feet. He stepped over weeds that were as tall as a man and galloped under the amber night sky. In an hour, he had chased for 100 miles and finally found the group of horse bandits. Amidst the smoke and dust, the horse gang shouted as they charged towards the caravan. The merchants barely managed to put up a defense, but in the face of the rumbling hooves of the horses, they could not hide the fear in their eyes. Their scimitars reflected the sunlight, dazzling white. Suddenly, someone asked, "What's that?" A cloud of smoke and dust came from the northwest direction and pierced into the group of horse bandits. A figure jumped high out of the smoke and landed on the horse bandit leader's carriage. Li Qingshan stood on the saddle, pressing down on the bandit leader's head with one hand and grabbing the reins with the other. He forcefully turned the horse around and brushed past the merchant group. The moment the merchant group brushed past them, the merchants all raised their heads. The expression on the young man's face in high spirits gave them the impression that he was not grabbing the bandit leader's head, but a huge piece of gold. Someone murmured, "That's a person." The horse bandits scolded and hurriedly chased. They did not care about the caravan and went to save their leader. From then on, no one ever saw the infamous giant deer-mounted bandits again. Galloping into a boundless wilderness, Li Qingshan slapped down with his right hand and slapped the head of the horse bandit leader into his stomach. The huge force passed to the horse and it fell to the ground. The horse bandits caught up, but Li Qingshan's figure had already disappeared. They suddenly raised their heads and saw flames falling from the sky, filling their eyes. The numbers changed. 755. On the second day after Li Qingshan had left the Jutang Valley, the carriage arrived. It was the young man in red again who got off the carriage to investigate. "Granny, he's not here. That kid sure is fast." Grandma Shimin unfurled a mental map and pointed at a point on it. "Let's go to the next place." This was the route that Li Qingshan had planned out in the beginning. She knew the mission that Li Qingshan was about to carry out like the back of her hand. They complained that the journey was just too boring. They were used to having fun in the Clear River Prefecture, so they did not like traveling such a long distance. Grandma Shimin said dotingly, "All right. Once we reach the next city, we'll rest up." It was a tiny puddle on the map, but when they saw it in person, it was a vast, misty lake. "This is it. This bastard sure knows how to enjoy himself." Li Qingshan stowed the mental map away and gazed into the distance. Through the depths of the mist, he could vaguely make out an island. The island was shaded by green willows, with red walls and green tiles vaguely visible. The lake was adjacent to the city. The scenery was pleasant, and it was extremely convenient. It was indeed a good place to live out one's days in peace. However, when he thought about how people like that actually had to live out their days in peace, Li Qingshan felt extremely displeased inside. Afterwards, he licked his lips, imagining their faces when they lost their smiles with devilish malice and delight. Using the darkness of the night, he entered the lake before making his way up from the other end of the island. Just now, he could see the luxurious manor clearly. Outside the manor, many armed guards patrolled the area. The security was tight, but to Li Qingshan, this level of security was basically non-existent. Li Qingshan leapt off the ground gently and arrived on the eaves several dozen meters away. Afterwards, he rushed towards the largest house. In the tent, breasts rippled and moans and teasing constantly rang out. "Master, you're so powerful," Li Qingshan rubbed his nose. He seemed to always end up ruining other people's plans. It was so late at night and all the bad guys were rolling in the sheets, while the good guys could only watch erotica. Yep, live erotica. Amidst the chaos, a light cough interrupted all the sounds. A figure leaped up from the bed and lifted the curtains. "Who is it?" Their eyes met. Both of them were rather surprised. Li Qingshan had never thought Xianxia would actually be an old man. Most of his hair had already turned white. Only then did he suddenly remember that it was written on the document that he had committed a crime in the past and had been shelved by the Hawkwolf Guard for many years. Even though he was a young man, he had become an old man. However, Xianxia saw a young man in simple clothes sitting boldly on an armchair, staring at him covetously. Although he did not give off any special aura, just the fact that he could appear in his bedroom silently was enough to shock him. "Put on your clothes. I have some things I want to talk to you about." Li Qingshan placed something on the table and stood up. Xianxia rushed over to the table. When he saw the item, he shuddered and paled. He picked it up carefully and felt a bone-chilling coldness. He shuddered again and his face became even paler. It was a black wolf that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. In a small pavilion hidden by verdant willows, Li Qingshan leaned against the railing and gazed at the lake in the distance. Xianxia changed his clothes and hurried over, offering up the black wolf tablet with both hands courteously. "May I ask for Sir's name and why you've come to my humble abode?" Li Qingshan accepted the tablet and said, "Don't you know what you've done? You've committed a crime, Xianxia." He had watched quite a few detective shows in his past life, so what he learnt was how to be dignified without being angry. Xianxia dropped to his knees with a plop. "Sir, it was all because of a moment of foolishness when I was young. Please be magnanimous and spare me. If you have any requests, I'll do it for you." He was a formidable figure of the underworld, a first-layer master of the Jianghu. Before he had even seen Li Qingshan fight, just the sight of the black wolf tablet scared him to the point of pissing his pants, begging for mercy on his knees. Xianxia was extremely helpless. Who would want to bow and scrape to someone several decades younger than them? When he saw the black wolf tablet, he wanted to flee, but he was reluctant to part with his family's business. And, if the Hawkwolf Guard really wanted to find him, how could they not find him? Fighting was even more impossible. Let alone what would happen if he lost. Even if he won out of luck, his entire family would be buried with him, whether it was angering or killing a Hawkwolf Guard. When Li Qingshan stood before him, he was no longer alone. Instead, he faced an organization of violence that the so-called people of the Jianghu feared. Of course, it was impossible for him to understand the hostile relationship between Li Qingshan and Zhuozhibua. To him, that was already a struggle between the upper echelons. However, Xianxia was still hopeful. Since Li Qingshan did not directly attack him, it meant he still had a chance. As a result, he mustered his courage and came over to listen to what Li Qingshan had to say. Sure enough, Li Qingshan said, "I have something for you to do." He sat on a stone bench in the pavilion and looked down at Xianxia, refusing to let him get up. Li Qingshan could treat regular people with courtesy, but he would be out of his mind if he paid any attention to courtesy when it came to someone like Xianxia. Compared to killing and robbing, he found actions like this even more shameless. If it were not for the fact that he had a plan in mind, he wanted to kill Xianxia right now. Xianxia riled up. Feel free to tell me what you need, Yamato. Li Qingshan took out 24 documents and tossed them before Xianxia. I want you to invite all the people up here, including their subordinates and their disciples. Anyway, the more people, the better. Xianxia's expression changed drastically. He immediately realized what Li Qingshan was trying to do. This young Hawkwolf guard actually had such terrifying thoughts, as if he wanted to capture all the masters of the underworld within a range of several hundred kilometers in one fell swoop. Li Qingshan said, for a birthday, for having a child, or for some other reason, for obtaining a supreme cultivation method or a divine weapon for everyone to appraise. As for the specifics, I'll leave it up to you. Xianxia said, Sir, you're trying to make me feel unjust. Li Qingshan sneered. Do you think a rapist like you is worthy of mentioning the word unjust? Xianxia's face reddened. He argued, it's all in the past. I left behind quite a lot of wealth for those women. They might not necessarily be unhappy. Chapter 155. Li Qingshan stepped on Xianxia's head and sucked in a deep breath. He growled, of the women you mentioned, 3 have committed suicide. I don't know about the others, but I'm warning you, don't provoke me. Yes. Xianxia stammered. He was willing to face a second-layer Qi practitioner with his strength at the first layer. Even if he could not win, he would be able to escape. However, only now did he discover he was wrong. The stomp was so fast that he could not react at all. The heavy killing intent was even more suffocating than the pressure on his head. Li Qingshan slowly removed his foot. Think about it. Xianxia lowered his head for a long time before raising it again. Will you let me go like this? Li Qingshan said, I'm not here to negotiate with you. Do you accept or not? You can try your luck. Under Li Qingshan's disdainful gaze, Xianxia said, I accept. Li Qingshan smiled and personally helped him up. You should have said that from the start. However, he had never planned on letting Xianxia go in the first place. Since he planned on using him, he could not display a will of, I will definitely kill you. That would not be chivalrous, but foolish. Xianxia's expression eased slightly. Li Qingshan saw that his facial features were regular and his appearance was dignified. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. You can be considered to be from a noble clan, so why would you do something like this? Xianxia said, I was young and ignorant. Sir, when would you like to summon those people? Li Qingshan said, the sooner the better. Xianxia said, I don't have much of a relationship with a few of them, and a few of them have long-cherished wishes. Even if I invite them, they might not come. Li Qingshan said, that'll depend on your abilities, Island Lord of Cherishing Flowers. Also, it doesn't have to be them. If you have any evil or heartless friends, feel free to invite them all. The more the better. If there are too few people and the gathering is too quiet, I will inevitably be a little unhappy. Xianxia's heart trembled. Although the person in front of him was young, he was definitely not a soft-hearted person. Otherwise, he would not have thought of such a terrifying thing. Right now, he could only brace himself and continue. He invited Li Qingshan to stay in the lakeside house for the time being and instructed the servants to serve him carefully and not to disturb him at will. The next day, an invitation was delivered to Li Qingshan. After Li Qingshan nodded, it was divided into dozens of copies and distributed to the experts on the blacklist. News of the Jianghu, the ambitious and ruthless figure of the underworld, the Island Lord of Cherishing Flowers, has obtained a bottle of pills that can allow acquired cultivators to reach the innate realm. He wishes to sell it to a group of masters. Please come to the Island of Cherishing Flowers on the 8th day of the 8th month, the beginning of autumn, and bid for it together. It's called the Pill Seizing Assembly. Li Qingshan sighed inside. This was basically the same as what had happened when he had obtained the spiritual ginseng in the past. Xianxia was already an innate master, so he obviously had no use for the pills. However, to the other first-rate masters, this was basically an irresistible temptation. Even if they were doubtful, they still had to try it. After throwing out the bait, all they had to do was wait for the fish to take the bait. From that day onwards, Xianxia greeted him every day. He was extremely considerate. Li Qingshan meditated and cultivated every day, never leaving his room. The people on the island only knew that he was an esteemed guest of the island lord, so they dared not disturb him. Coupled with the fact that he would mutter to himself from time to time, it seemed extremely eerie, which made people even more afraid to approach him. As a result, Li Qingshan decided to meditate and refine his qi day and night. He swallowed the qi-gathering pills like water, converting them into demon qi and true qi. In less than 10 days, he had swallowed 200 pills. The effects were also extremely obvious. On the 2nd of the 8th month, his innate training of qi formula finally broke through the 4th tier and reached the 5th tier. His true qi became increasingly powerful, and it flowed endlessly in his yang-heal meridian. The feng qi meridian at the back of his head also became more sensitive to the qi of heaven and earth. It was like a blurry picture that gradually became clearer, and he could slowly discern the meaning of the picture. Although he did not reveal his demon form, he must have grown by quite a bit. Li Qingshan walked out of the little hut. The sky was overcast, and it had been drizzling since 3 days ago. The summer heat gradually receded, and the cool air gradually rose. It was almost autumn. The 8th of the 8th month was an auspicious number, and the autumn lord's murderous aura made it a good time to kill. Li Qingshan could not wait any longer. With a punch, his true qi broke through the air, and the surface of the lake exploded high into the air. He turned his head and saw Little and leaning on the railing. He could not help but smile. Looking at his skeletal body, he had an idea. Before this, he still had to make some preparations. On the morning of the 3rd of the 8th month, Xianxia came to pay his respects again. Li Qingshan said, "Can you prepare some clothes?" Little and had reconstructed his body, but of course he could not reconstruct clothes as well. He needed clothes to cover his body. Although Xianxia was puzzled, he did not dare to ask, "Clothes? What size do you want? A boy or a girl?" "A boy, about 7 or 8 years old. The size is fine." As Li Qingshan spoke, he felt a little excited. He felt like a father welcoming his child into the world. The next day, Xianxia sent over a dozen sets of clothes. They were all of different colors and styles, and they were all made of the highest quality silk. There were even many children's toys. Li Qingshan smiled. He thought, it's not like Shaoan is a regular child, so why would he play with these pieces of wood? He did not say anything more. He ordered Xianxia to continue preparing for the pill-seizing assembly. He had already made up his mind to turn it into a life-seizing assembly. However, when he thought about it, such a great conspiracy that could topple the world seemed to be the prerogative of villains. His idea of killing everyone in the assembly really did make him feel like a great villain. However, he felt that it was wonderful. In this beautiful moment where Little and was about to obtain a new life, he sighed emotionally like a poet. Death is new life. Then he gained some understanding of the true meaning of the path of white bone and great beauty. After Xianxia left, Little and walked out from behind the curtains. His bony fingers caressed the beautiful silk, imagining himself wearing it. He raised his head, and his eyes met Li Qingshan's. They were momentarily speechless. There was only the sound of rain outside the window, but there was a quiet joy flowing in their hearts. Then, Little and happily played with the toys, the windmill, the spinning top, the bamboo dragonfly. This left Li Qingshan rather stunned. Then he reflected on whether he did not care enough for Little and. If he thought about it more carefully, ever since he was with Little and, it seemed like the thing he did the most was kill people. Killing people was not a bad thing. In this cruel world, it was probably a necessary skill. There was a need for adult beasts to teach their young how to hunt. That was how Li Qingshan comforted himself so that his conscience would not suffer too much. Then, he sat there and propped his head up with his hand. He began to think deeply about the problem of Little Anne's education. In the future, he would bring him out to sightsee and experience nature more often. Then, he could not help but smile. He felt warm. Although this world was very cruel, he was not alone. Even a lion would use its full strength to capture a rabbit. On the day before the 8th of the 8th month, Li Qingshan finished all of his qi-gathering pills, adjusting his body to its peak condition. Tomorrow, when those bastards gathered together, what would he say as a prelude? For the sake of the beauty in my heart, I ask all of you, ugly ones, to die. He seemed more and more like a great villain. Do I look good? Grandma Ximen asked. Yes, you look good. The man with the 9 dragons tattooed on his body lowered his head and said in fear. His companion's blood had just spread to the soles of his feet. Just because he saw this ugly old woman, he smiled and then split into pieces. Then why don't you look at me? Grandma Ximen said darkly. The man slowly raised his head and then was stunned. He had never seen such a beautiful woman in his life. Cold eyes, noble, it made his heart beat faster and he could not control himself. Suddenly, a man's portrait appeared in front of him. That sweet voice, like the singing of an oriole, asked, "Have you seen this person before?" He shook his head blankly, blaming himself for not being able to help her. Then die. His shriveled lips spat out cruel words. The man immediately smashed the top of his skull with a backhand. Before he died, he looked at Grandma Ximen in a daze, a smile still on his face. Originally, he thought he would only be a pirate for the rest of his life, but he never thought he would be able to die for the person he loved. He felt happy from the bottom of his heart. My life was worth it. Leaving the water snake gang, Grandma Ximen said furiously, "Just where did that brat run off to?" In the past few days, she had searched according to the best route that Li Qingshan should have taken, but there were no traces of Li Qingshan at all. She had completely lost track of Li Qingshan. In the end, she could not hold it in anymore and went on a killing spree. Behind her, the corpses of the good men of the water snake were strewn across the ground. They could no longer cook dumplings in the river anymore. They all smiled happily, dying for love. The red-clothed young man found a vermilion invitation card from the gang leader's bosom and handed it to Grandma Ximen. Grandma Ximen looked at the invitation card and thought for a while. She smiled eerily. I see. This brat does have some brains. I've underestimated him. Come, let's go to Lakeside City. The 8th of the 8th month, Lakeside City, Island of Cherishing Flowers. Li Qingshan tidied himself up and took out the chipped wind-entwining blade, hanging it on his waist. Looking out from the window, he saw many small boats sailing over in the wind and rain. They stopped at the dock, and many people emerged. Most of them carried weapons, and their faces were ferocious. He could tell with a single glance that they were not good people. They matched the information on Li Qingshan's documents. These unorthodox masters were worried that this was a trap, so they were on guard against one another. They all gathered their best subordinates, just in case. However, they had no idea that there were people counting like sheep in the shade of the willow trees. 281. 342. 557. By nightfall, the number had already surpassed Li Qingshan's expectations. The island was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and a great banquet was held in the hall. Under Xianxia's hosting, the unorthodox masters all gathered together. It really was a grand banquet. Xianxia spoke cheerfully, showing no flaws at all. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.